Hello, Izanagi here. Now, this is a video I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. Essentially, discussing the ending, or endings, I guess that's a spoiler, for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So, obviously, before I even begin, big spoiler, huge spoiler warnings. Do not watch or listen to this video before you have beaten the game. I'm basically going to spoil everything to do with the endings. And this game is essentially a narrative masterpiece, so you should experience it for yourself. Don't let this video spoil you. And yeah, if you played the game, I am in the Descendre family manor. I probably butchered that because I'm not French. I completely murdered that pronunciation. As you can see, my characters are very bloody. Just killed a few Neverons, you know how it is. Keeping the canvas clean, I suppose. Okay, so first of all, this is by far my most favourite game I played this year. Obviously, still halfway through the year, so there's still more games to play. I think on like a narrative level, nothing is going to touch this. The game, I mean, anything about this game is good. You know, the narrative, the gameplay, the graphics, the music. It's just like a solid package to me. It's like a 10 out of 10. Well, that's just me basically gussing over the game. Okay, so if you beat the game, once again, spoilers. The last time I'm going to give the spoiler warning. So if you beat the game, you know there are two endings which you can pick from. There's Verso's ending, and there's Mael. And you pick the character to fight against the opposite. You know, so you pick Mael, you're fighting Verso, and vice versa. And it's a very, you know, dramatic, climactic showdown right at the end of the game. I know a lot of people had a tough time picking that choice. A lot of people. Been watching reacts to it and streamers play the game, and like that decision, it's rough. It is definitely rough. So me, I feel like from what I've seen just from looking online, I feel like the majority of people do pick Verso's ending, and for good reasons, obviously. But for me, I actually picked Mael's ending. Now, I do have my reasons and logic behind the choice of picking Mael. So, for me personally, whilst I was given the choice in the moment, Verso's ending seemed pretty cut and dry. It essentially involved the painted world, along with all its creations and inhabitants getting basically vanished, snapped out of existence, right? And it just seemed kind of like very hands-on and pressing the nuclear red button, kind of like destroying everything. Now, a lot of people would like to use the argument, well, you know, these aren't real people, they're just AI, right? They're just painted people. And it's just like, I completely disagree with that line of thinking. Because we essentially have spent the whole game traveling with these characters. You know, they've been our companions. Lune, Ciel, Monaco, Esquier. These are all our companions and our friends. Even before we leave Lumiere for the expedition, you go around talking to the people right before the gommage. You know, people have their fears, hopes, and anxieties. You know, they're all very anxious about the expedition. These are like real people with real emotions. Despite how, you know, dark and bleak the situation looks, they still retain their resolve and keep pushing forward. If you ask me, you can't get more humanity than that. Is like pushing basically against an undefeatable enemy, right? Despite the odds. Like that is pretty the very definition of being human, is despite the odds pushing forward no matter what. Also, you know, throughout the expedition, you are going to run into audio logs of previous expeditions, leaving behind their trail and their experiences. There's just so many of them. There's like one where, you know, the super roided out expedition where they essentially almost made it all the way to the monolith, and they fought the Paintress. And they didn't have any Lumina, they didn't have any, like, superpowers or Pictos. They basically just used raw, pure muscle and might. And that was it. And then one of them tried to swim back through sheer force of will, only to get Gumarge right before they hit the shores of Lumiere to inform people about, you know, kind of like, no, don't go after the Paintress. The real enemy is under the monolith. Right? So, I just find it crazy when people are like, oh, well, you know, every person inside the painted canvas is just AI, so fuck it. Who cares if you erase them? And that's kind of like what some people use as the justification to Verso's ending, which I'm just like, it's a very narrow-minded, short-sighted, and ignorant viewpoint. It almost makes me think, did we play the same game? Like, did we experience the same experiences? Like, I personally don't understand. Now, that being said, there's obviously many positive outcomes to Verso's ending. But I will get into that later. Now I want to discuss Mael's ending, the one which I picked. So, my personal expectation for Mael's ending, because it's an ending that has so many possibilities, just based off the nature of your saving the canvas and all its inhabitants, right? I would have preferred it if Mael did indeed kept her promise to her father Renoir and eventually leave the canvas. You know, so with this way she can go back and forth to visit the canvas, you know, every once in a while. I mean, I guess there'd be some kind of irony in a god coming to visit their creations, because Mael at this point is essentially a god from the perspective of the painted Lumerians, right? Because she can essentially erase people with like a paintbrush. She can recreate them in her own way. She is essentially god of this world, right? Which is an interesting side point, right? So, just from like a pure human and psychological level, how would Mael's friends and family treat her knowing this fact, right? As well as just like the normal everyday citizens of Lumiere. You know, the knowledge that she is this omnipotent god that can do anything, can erase you when she feels like it. She can paint you when she feels like it. Would they still view her as that, you know, the innocent, naive 16-year-old girl? Or would they just view her as like this, on purposes, god now, right? So that's an interesting fact. Would her family start treating her differently? Her friends, the people? Also, in terms of like, this is going real deep into like, I guess, political matters now. Would there be factions that actually rise up, right? You know, would there be a whole sect, like a religious group that just worship Mael as like their god? And vice versa, would there also be like an organization that rise up that are like, okay, this Mael, she holds too much power. She can basically erase us at a whim. And maybe like an anti-Mael / Paintress organization would rise up to try and like overthrow her. So you can clearly see, if you go into a lot of detail with this world, there's a lot of like political like situations you can get down on. Now obviously Clair Obscur Expedition 33 overall isn't a story about politics, but if you wanted to do like a side story that delves into like the political system of Lumiere, that'd be interesting to delve into if you went with that specific ending in general, right? Like obviously in the beginning there's certain mention of politics in terms of like, you know, the expedition itself being like a bloodless guillotine. It's kind of like, well, we know essentially we are sending these people to the death, right? But it's good for morale. That was the whole kind of argument. Gustave's sister, was it Emily? It's been a long time. I think it was Emily made, who was kind of like the mayor. She made to the people, right? That, you know, the expedition is it's an unfortunate thing that has to be done, despite the fact, you know, it's kind of a bloodless guillotine. Counter argument to leaving. So obviously it's easy for me to say, oh, Mael should just leave and revisit the canvas whenever she feels like it. Now the counter argument to this is, well, what she herself also has said is that as soon as she takes a foot outside the canvas, Renoir is going to enter and just completely obliterate it. So that, that essentially erases all temptation for Maëlle to go back into the canvas, right? It's like, oh, well, like an addict, right? Oh, if I take away your alcohol, you're probably not going to be able to drink anymore, right? Or if I take away your drug supply, you're probably not going to be able to do drugs. I mean, obviously, that's a very simplistic perspective to look at it from. Because I understand people do make, addiction allegories to Maëlle's situation. And I do see some relations, but I think that's a very simplistic way of kind of categorizing it. I think there's a lot more deeper in depth than just like, oh, she's an addict, right? Because I've seen that online as well, where they just think, oh, Maëlle's an addict and she needs to break the cycle, yada yada. But like the context is completely different. We're taking into consideration someone who can live a perfect normal life to someone who's broken down and disfigured and has a disability. Like the line between, oh, this is just an addiction, it's way more nuanced than people actually give it credit for. They don't really think about it in that terms. Let me just look here. I did write some notes. I'm doing this on top of my head as well, but it's good to have notes. Oh yeah, we were talking about Renoir. So essentially, Renoir might not keep his promise, but my opinion personally is I think Renoir would keep the promise, because I think he would see, he would respect the fact that Maëlle kept her promise to him, and the fact that she is showing resolve by just the notion of her removing herself on the canvas and having, like, self-control and restraint. I think he would respect that, and in return, he would not erase the canvas. Maybe that's just me being naive, along with Maëlle. It could possibly be true, but like I don't know. I kind of, for some reason, I do have faith in Renoir and keeping his end of the bargain, that he wouldn't erase it. I feel like he would respect his daughter's wishes. Okay. I need to drink some water. Talking is not easy. It is actually quite dehydrating to the throat. So TLDR, my ideal ending would have been Maëlle leaves the painted world so it can exist and govern without her presence or leadership, but goes to visit every once in a while. Think of it like she's going on like a mini vacation. Now you could argue, well, how long would she have the willpower to be able to do that? Could she resist the temptations of just essentially living the canvas and living a better life? Right, so that's always going to be a struggle, obviously. Now, the less favourable ending for me, in terms of Maëlle's ending, is that she spends a full lifespan living in the canvas, 60, 70 years. And she eventually dies of, natural causes, like if she were in the real world. But she lives on her terms, and she's happy with it. Unfortunately, from what we saw from Maëlle's ending, we know eventually she gets corrupted, just like her mother, Eileen, and turns into the paintress, right? That's what we grasp from that ending. And this is an effect of if she stays in the canvas for a long period of times. However, during the ending, it didn't seem like Maëlle. We don't really know how long she was in the canvas up until that point. Maybe it was like a couple months, a couple years. We do not know. But we can clearly see visually the corruption and her becoming the new paintress was in full effect. Now, this is bad, obviously, because it puts Lumiere at risk again. Because it potentially could repeat the cycle. Renoir is like, okay, fuck this. I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to go in it and force her out, just like he did with Eileen, his wife. And then essentially you got the cycle repeating itself again and again and again. You have Maëlle, that's a new paintress, fighting against Renoir, who once again, this time he's not trying to save his wife, he's trying to save his daughter. And the unfortunate sad thing about this is it's the actual inhabitants of Lumiere that are getting caught between. They're basically in the crossfires between, once again, a family feud, family drama. Their lives are being, you know, because Renoir is going to want to kill them, and like Mael's going to want to protect them, and you might have a situation where you've got another monolith and you've got another countdown, and it's just back to square one, I guess. And that's, you know, it's obviously bad for the citizens of Lumiere, and it's also bad for the Descent family, right? It's a lose-lose situation. Now, putting the fate of Lumiere to the side, and the cycle possibly repeating itself, the biggest downside to this is that Verso's soul, you know, his child Verso's soul, is still locked within the canvas. He will still be... Now, this is kind of like, some people say young boy Verso enjoys painting, and other people say he hates it because he's trapped here. Now, there's different bits of dialogue throughout the game where it's both like points could be made, so it's kind of like a middle ground there. But my opinion is, I think overall young Verso wants to stop painting. I think he's tired of it, in my opinion. I know there's also arguments to the other side that he enjoys the painting, but I don't know. And there's also the issue of painted Verso. So, for example, we see in Mael's ending, she essentially, you know, repaints Verso, and he's aged. Now, my boy Verso, yeah, he pretty much wants to die. He wants to kill himself. He is miserable. He hates his life. He hates the fact that he's a painted copy. He hates the fact that, you know, he's been alive for like 100 years. He just essentially wants to... He wants to be gone, right? Now, Mael repaints him as an older version of himself. I'm unsure if he still retains his immortality or if he will die of like natural causes as well, because I think he still has what he refers to as Mama's gift, where like Elaine gave him the immortality. She painted him with it, but since Mael repainted him, maybe she didn't include the immortality part. Maybe that's discarded. I'm unsure about that. If anyone actually knows for certain, like, that'd be interesting to know. Put in the comment section. If, you know, Verso kept his immortality, or if he will eventually die of old age. Because, you know, if he's basically old man Verso and he's immortal, I feel really bad for the painted Verso. He's basically stuck in purgatory. Maybe eventually, you know, he will come to love his life, but I highly doubt it from what we know of the character and what we've seen of him. I don't think that's gonna happen. I don't think he's gonna suddenly wake up one day and goes, "Oh, I love my life." Where are you? In the canvas, you know. I don't think that's gonna happen. Okay. Verso's ending. So, this is, from what I've seen online, this is kind of overall the majority ending most people pick. So, Verso's ending is essentially you nuke the canvas out of existence with all its inhabitants, freeing young Verso's soul. He finally stops painting. Now, it's quite emotional, seeing all the characters you know loves slowly but surely fade away. It's a tough pill to swallow. It's a tough pill to swallow. A heavy sacrifice after the game takes us what appears to be to the real world, the real Lumiere. We have a scene where we essentially have the Descente family. I'm never going to pronounce that right, so there's no point. They are mourning the real Verso. They are at his funeral. So overall, I do find this part to be bittersweet, because essentially you have Renoir and Eileen. They are both, you know, comforting each other, mourning each other over the loss of their son. Because you've got to remember, even though technically it's been, I guess, 70 years for them, because they've spent time in the canvas fighting back and forth. In the real world, it's only been a couple days since the real world Verso has died. So it hasn't been long at all. So what annoys me about this ending is, you know, the fact they're kind of mourning together, and then you just have Mael. She is just standing there by herself. The only real thing that's giving her comfort is that very cute SKA plushie that she's, you know, holding on to tightly. So you think about this from Mael's perspective. I know some people don't really do that, but from her perspective, not only does she have the emotional scars of losing essentially what is like a second family to her, because she's still got all her memories as Mael, even though she's Alicia now, right? So like she pretty much lost like a second family and all her friends in like that life when she was in the canvas. But she also has the physical scars. Like her body is disfigured. She's unable to walk. She gets, you know, easily fatigued. She's unable to speak. Now, this essentially is, sometimes we have to accept reality no matter how harsh it is. That's the moral of the story. But at what cost, right? So for me, this is my hope with the Mael. Well, I guess I keep calling her Mael, but essentially she is Alicia now, right? Because her Mael self pretty much got yeeted. The canvas is no more. All her friends and family and that world is gone. So, but she still has those experiences. So, so I hope she can move forward and improve her life despite all the negative stuff that's happened. You know, all the heartache and like just terrible stuff. I would like to hope that her family members can, you know, support her during this time. But from what we've seen of the Desande family as a whole, I think all of them need therapy. Like they are all dealing with emotions and loss of their own. You know, they essentially, Eileen and Renoir, spent an entire century fighting against each other in the canvas. Going back and forth. They've just recently are still processing the loss of Verso. It's you know, it's just insane. So TLDR, I overall love the game. I think the game is amazing. Now, some people could say that why wasn't there like a third ending? You know, an ending where, you know, is definitively that is the ending you pick. It's got the best outcome for everyone. Now, I personally liked it that the devs and the writers went with this, because making both endings bittersweet with their own like advantages and but also both their flaws, it draws a lot of discussion and debate to the game, and I think it's very thought-provoking. So as much as I would have liked an ending where, you know, it's kind of like overall but it would be like classified as a true ending, like the overall objectively the best ending, I do like the approach the devs have taken with this ending, because it's so, with the two different endings rather, because it's so thought-provoking, and it really does make you think. As I have been rambling for like 15-20 minutes, I don't know how long I've been going on, but so yeah, essentially I just want to make this video expressing my opinion on the two different endings and what I picked, because this game has been in my head for the past, like, even though I beat it like maybe like 2 months ago now, I still think about the game. Like, the story is that good. So yeah, if you made it this far through my incoherent ramblings, I know I kind of like paused and stuttered a bit there. I am doing this like straight off the bat. I have got notes, but sometimes I do get lost. I do have like brain fog and my brain goes derp, right? But overall, if you like this video, that's cool. If you would like to leave a comment and talk about the video a bit more, that'd be awesome too. But overall, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, have a good day, and see ya. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.